the birth of Western music, and it all began with chant. That was kind of our first notated music in the Western world. And chant began in the Middle Ages, around 1600, and it was pretty much the only form of sacred music for almost 1,000 years. Yeah, and so this is why, I mean, I'm like really proud to work with a church that continues this tradition of this kind of sacred music. And we'll see later in a few examples today how music started to deviate from chant and to embellish it or elaborate chant. So what you hear in the Mass every week that I'm singing at the front of the organ, kind of unaccompanied, those are called propers, and they used to be very florid, elaborate melodies. We've kind of simplified it here and sing it in English at St. Albans, but they used to be in Latin, and we will actually use those elaborate tones on very high feast days like Easter. So once in a while we do use what we call Gregorian melodies and chants. Yeah. So, but there are much simpler chants that everyone can sing, like this. Okay, this is what our preface dialogue is right before the Holy, Holy, Holy. And so I want you to, we're going to sing it right now, okay? Just like every single Sunday we sing this. But I want you to read first the lower line and then the top line. Okay, so first let's all read the lower line. Okay, so the Lord be, I'll pretend I'm the priest, okay? The Lord be with you.
And with thy spirit.
Good, okay? So now read the top line, which is exactly the same music, but it is in an older notation, which we call square notation or neum notation. Okay, so the Lord be with you.
And with thy spirit.
Good, okay? So notice there are some differences, okay? And I'm going to ask you to name what those differences are, okay? We're going to go to the next line of this call and response. Okay, so read the lower line first. Okay? Lift up your hearts.
We lift them up unto the Lord.
Good.
Are we reading this? Like actually reading this while we're singing it?
Yes?
Yeah.
Can
That's
you
what I
see
said.
it? Oh, yeah,
You
but
can
when
move over here if it's hard
the
for
thing
you.
is that I mostly know it because I know it, but I don't know if I could just look at a piece of music and figure it out.
Well,
That's
that's what we were working on in the past 3 weeks, yeah?
Yeah, but to do it at the same time, I
Yeah.
can,
Okay, so let's take a look at the top line of MusicSkills Hearts, okay? Lift up your hearts.
We lift them up unto the Lord.
Good. We're going to do a little choir practice here, okay? So I am kind of chanting, that's what we call this, okay? At a sort of pace. Ta 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 ta. It's almost like grand speech. Ta pa pa. Lift up your hearts. Very kind of meaty speech, like singing. Okay, but I'd like you to try and match my speed. So can you try to do that? Okay, and I'll sing the refrain, the response with you as well. Okay, but lift up your hearts.
We lift them up unto the Lord.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so I would like you actually every Sunday to help with the people around you and not drag this too slowly. Yeah, because it actually is getting slower and slower every week, and I almost can't sing because I'm so far ahead of the congregation that, yeah, it kind of feels weird. Okay, but now here's our little treasure hunt, okay? can you tell me, spot some differences between the top and bottom lines? Anyone? Ariel?
There are slurs on the bottom line, and on the top line, they don't have that. They put the notes on top of each other.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so when there are notes or words or syllables that have two notes, okay, sometimes in the new notation, they're stacked on each other. Yeah, they're on top of each other. That's correct. Yes. Okay. What about at the very beginning of each line? What do you see there?
Is a treble clef on
Correct. Yeah.
top.
And then we see this funny. What does that letter? What letter does that look like? A C.
Yeah.
Oh, two
At the
notes.
very top, at the new notation, the chant notation. Yeah. Okay. So that is actually called a C clef. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, the interesting thing though about C clefs in chant notation is that they can be anywhere. They can be here or here or here, any line. Okay. This clef is movable, unlike the treble clef, which is always here and that is always a G. Okay. But in this new notation, okay, and that should have been, oh yeah, so the other huge difference in this notation is that there are how many lines?
4 versus 5.
Yeah, there's 4 lines in the chant notation, okay, versus the 5 lines of our modern system. Mm-hmm.
In the C clef, does moving of the clef eliminate accidentals?
Yes, in a way, yes. But I'm going to talk more about that later, okay? We're just going to keep spotting some visual differences. Okay, so we talked about those two, okay? So when you have 2 notes that are sung to the same syllable, sometimes they're written in the chant notation on top of each other, okay? This notation has a term, it's called a pes or a podatus, that's the Latin term, but no one needs to care about that here, okay? That's just technical definitions, but yeah, so you always read these stacks of neumes from bottom to top. Remember that. That's very important. Bottom to top.
You know,
Okay?
I can intellectually look at you and tell you which note everything is,
Yeah.
but to get it together and know what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah, we're just doing visual right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay? So keep reading. Where do you see the next difference? How about, yeah, Eric?
I don't see any whole notes. I see everything's like a.
Excellent, excellent. In chant, there are no white notes. Everything is black notes, okay? And one of the ways that we can indicate, so is a white note or a black note longer? Usually.
White note is on
White notes are longer, okay? So one of the ways we can indicate length in the old chant notation is with that dot,
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say that.
okay?
Makes sense.
So that dot does not have a metrical meaning though in chant notation. In some, it's not like half of the note value or something like that. Okay, but it actually means you should just double the length of the note. Okay, whatever note. I mean, there are no other note values except the black notes. Okay, so okay, let's keep reading. What other symbols do you find that are different? Okay, yeah, there are some bar line differences. There's like double bars. Okay, but that just indicates
Is it double note there? Like, it looks
which
like there's a line.
text word.
It's not the one after the green one, the one afterwards, it looks like there's.
Which text word? And with thy, which
Oh,
word are you
okay,
talking
B.
about? Huh?
B, isn't it on B?
Oh, you're looking way back there. Yeah, okay, so that's, the B is the same as the, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and we talked about how if it's like a stack of neumes, the square notation, it means you should read the notes from bottom to top.
Okay, it still look like they're connected, so, never mind.
Yeah, okay, so the connection is that the word B is sung to both those notes. There's 2 notes for that word, B.
And then
Yeah.
one afterwards is, and then flag, bottom flag on it, and then another one after that too.
Mm-hmm, yeah, with,
With.
so, yeah, so that is actually very similar to our modern notation, the
Yeah.
with, okay? okay? There's two notes and they're kind of next to each other, which means you just read from left to right, like reading words, yeah. Okay, good. So what about at the very end of the line? There's a funny little symbol there. Does anyone, do people see that?
Beyond the two bars.
Oh, yeah, what is?
Okay, this thing is actually, I find we should do this in modern music too. It tells you what the first note of the next line.
Oh.
It's called acoustos, yeah. Okay. It's it's super useful. Okay, so you don't even need to look at the next line and you know where the next note is going to be already. Yeah. So that thing on the second line is corresponding to the first note of lift. Yeah. Okay, so now let's look at the second line. Okay, and what do you see on the word lift that is kind of interesting and different? Yeah, there's a squiggly thingy. Yeah. Okay. So we'll talk about that later. It is called a quilisma. Okay. And I think that's about all the special notations. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna pause on this notation stuff. Okay. And I'm going to kind of jump to. I'm going to go back to the clef system because this is actually the most important link between the modern notation and the ancient notation, okay? So remember we talked about clefs, the C clef can move, okay? But what the C clef indicates is not a particular pitch on the piano. It does not indicate a particular pitch. It indicates do. Okay, and remember, do can be any note. We can define do to be any note. Okay, and so if you are writing, let's say, C clef is here, okay, and you draw a square here, and I'm not going to color every single square in because that would take up a lot of ink and time. Okay, that is defined as do. Okay, this is very important. It's very different from our modern notation. Okay, because our modern notation just tells you, on the piano what note is played. Okay, and then the piano gives you a particular pitch for every note. Okay, with a letter. Okay, but in chant notation, the piano and the keyboard actually wasn't invented yet. Okay, it would be quite a few hundred years before that stuff, keyboards happened. But it's a relative system. Okay, and remember the C is where do is. Okay, so let's test here. What is this note? Give me the solfege. So go backwards, right? It do. What's below do? And then la. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. And then what about here? Re. Yeah. Okay. So this is important. Okay. So there's another clef which we need to define in chant notation. Okay, and that is a C with a funny little thing next to it, and it's really hard to draw well. So I'm just going to show you on here. It's in your packet, page 1 or something. Okay, so so this is the do clef, the C clef. Okay, and then there's another kind of clef called the fa clef, okay, or F clef, okay, and it indicates that whatever that C with a little hook next to it is, that is a fa. That line is fa, okay. So so assuming that we're using this clef here, what is that note?
Fa.
Good. And what is this note?
La.
La. Yeah, fa, sol, la. right? And then what about this note? So you'll have to count 3 down. Fa, mi, re, do. Okay. All right. So let's go back to our sursum corda, which is what this is called. Okay. Lift up your hearts, sursum corda. Okay. Let's read this on our solfege now. Okay. So what is the first solfege syllable that the Lord starts on? Yeah, someone said it. Sol,
So,
right? So the third line, right? Do ti la sol da sol la ti la la. Okay, and before we do this, okay, we are able to use all these do re mi fa sol la ti do because of an amazing thing that the music of chant uses the same notes as our major scale. Yeah. That's also a very important point, okay? It's the same spacings of all those intervals that we were talking about, the whole, half, whole, half in the major scale, okay? Chant uses that too. That's pretty amazing, okay? So that's another big connection between the old music and the new music, okay? So you don't need to think up a whole different system of like intervals and spacings. You just have to use these syllables, the solfege syllables, and you will be able to figure out what the chant should sound like, okay? This you already know, okay? But we're going to try and process this in our solfege system now, okay? So yes, the first syllable is so, okay? And I actually, let's just write it out here. So it will help you to read, and I'll write out the syllables as we're going. Okay. And I'm not going to color in everything, okay? Okay, and you'll see that, and with thy spirit is actually the same. Okay, so here we go. So what? Can you just read for me what the solfege syllables would be? So es sol.
So,
The next note is above that, right, on the stack.
T,
So la, right?
oh, yeah, that one's T.
T, and then
So,
so, la, T, la, la. Okay, can you sing that? So, here's so. Okay, ready? So la ti, so la ti la la. Okay, the Lord be with you. Let's just do that again with the English. The Lord be with you. And going back to the solfege. So la ti la la. Can someone sing do? So la ti do do. Yeah, so that's our imaginary do, which we never hit here. Okay, but you do have like a kind of scalar framework, okay, from our talking all about the major scale in do re mi, to figure that out if you didn't know that chant. Okay. Question?
yeah, if chant is predominantly based on major scales, do you see
Sort of.
minor much in there? Minor
We will
mode?
get to that, yeah. So I will, I'll address that soon, yeah. Okay, so I want to now, okay, now that we've defined what the clefs are, okay, the C and F clefs, I want to move now to something that's really useful for our worship here at St. Albans, and that's learning how to read the Psalms. Okay? And we sing two types of psalms here: plain song psalms and Anglican chant psalms. Okay? And they're very different, but again, everything arose and was formed from plain song in some way. Okay? And I'm going to show you the link between those two in just a little bit. Okay? So Plainsong psalmody uses this notation, okay, all these little squares, okay, and basically there's a melody that is repeated for every verse in Plainsong psalms, okay, and we just need to figure out the, where do we put the words to the notes, basically, okay? So in every Plainsong psalm has these components, okay? There's an intonation, and then there's a reciting tone, and then there's like a little cadence or like a it's like the end of a sentence, okay? I call it mediation, okay? And then there's a second reciting tone. Okay, and then there's our final cadence, which is just called termination, okay? All right, so every Plainsong psalm melody is in this format, okay? And most of the words are going to be sung here and here, okay? This consists of maybe 3 or 4 notes. This consists of maybe 3 or 4 notes. But this only has actually one note. That many syllables are sung to this note. That's why it is called a reciting tone, because you recite a lot of words on it, okay? And this is also the same thing. Okay, it's actually usually the same pitch, these 2 reciting tones. Okay, and then this intonation is like a little introduction that only the cantor sings. Usually me, or maybe one of our choristers, okay? And the intonation is only used ever on the first verse of a Plainsong song, okay? So let's look at this thing, okay? So I will just sing it for you, okay? On solfege. Sol, la, do, 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 do. Here's the reciting tone. Mediation. Here's the second reciting tone. Termination. Okay, so just try and read. Okay, I am skipping this flexus thing because that's it's not as commonly used. Okay, but can we all sing this on solfege with me? Okay. Sol, la, do, 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 re, do, 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 ti, do, la, so. Okay? Sort of? Does that sort of make sense? Okay? Yeah, in our book, in our chant book here, the reciting tone is written out as 3 notes, but basically it's telling you should sing all the words on that. Okay, so you'll see that there's these little tick marks here, okay? Those correspond to word stresses, basically. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to do a real example now, okay? This is the same tone. And if you want to read it on your paper, it's page 6, top of page 6, okay? So, and remember the cantor only sings the first verse, okay? Or sorry, the intonation, which is the first 3 notes. Okay? Oh, sing unto the Lord a new song. And then you see that asterisk. So that asterisk basically corresponds to the bar line. Okay? And it indicates that there's a reciting tone again after it. Okay? Sing unto the Lord. Okay, and that dot here tells you that you should begin one of these cadences, either the mediant or the termination, okay? So, oh, sing unto the Lord a new song, right? And then, sing unto the Lord all the whole earth. Yeah, okay, and then that white note, okay, we just said that there are no white notes in chant notation, okay? But this is basically, it's not really any, like, indication of rhythm or anything. It's just telling you that that note is optional. Yeah. You don't always use it. So, all the whole earth only has 1, 2, 3, 4. It only has 4 words. So you only need to sing 4 notes, okay? Okay, let's try verse 12. Okay, so where does verse 12 start? I just told you that the cantor is the only person that uses the intonation. So what would do you agree we start here, right? We start right on the reciting tone for the second verse, okay? So here we go. Let the field be joyful and all that is in it. Then shall all the trees of the Lord rejoice before the Lord. And so on you did need to use this because joyce before the Lord is 5, right? Joyce before the Lord. Yes? Okay, keep going. For he
John 12.
cometh to judge the earth, and with righteousness to judge the world, and the peoples with his truth. Okay? Does that sort of make sense? Okay. Yeah. All right. So then there's one more stylistic thing that we should talk about, which I like to get our choir to do this, is that at this asterisk at the half verse, okay, we put a long silence in between there. Okay? And this is, it dates back to like when the psalms like this were sung in monasteries, and the monks would alternate on either side. Every other verse would be sung by another side. Okay, and the middle was actually used as a kind of meditation, because every psalm verse has 2 parts, even in like the Hebrew. The first half and the second half often comment on each other or are related textually to each other. So that middle part, that middle verse is actually like a kind of moment for you to think about what you just sang, and then you respond after it. Okay, but we have very little time here at St. Albans between verses. Okay? So that's a practice that I'm always trying to like instill in our singing. Yeah.
Presumably that's a good point to take a breath.
Yeah, exactly. Is a great, yeah. So we pause for like 2 or 3 seconds in the middle at the half verse. Yeah. And here we alternate between cantor and congregation choir. Yeah. So you only sing 1 verse and then you take a break for 1 verse and sing 1 verse, take a break. Okay. So this is a brief intro to Plainsong Psalmody, okay? And, you can think about more about it as you have the packet, okay? But around the time of the Renaissance and the Reformation, not exclusively Protestants were doing this, but even Catholics were doing this, they started to harmonize Plainsong psalm tones, okay? And this is an example from Luther's hymnal, where he harmonizes. So the psalm tone here is I'm sorry, this keyboard is terrible. Yeah, this is not good. Let me just see why it is so slow again. Okay, my computer is like maximum speed. I'm gonna try and play it on this piano. Okay, and see if I can read it from there. Okay. Here's the reciting tone. Okay, so that's the song tone, and this is what Luther did to harmonize it. So he doesn't use the intonation. Basically like the same tone, but he put chords underneath it. Triads, remember that term from last week? That's basically like 4-note chords that are based on triads, yeah? Okay, and so this is actually how Anglican chant developed. It was harmonizing Plainsongs, psalm tones. Okay, and then this one is a different tone, and this composer, we don't know the composer actually. He put the melody in the tenor. The 3rd line is called the tenor line, Okay, and here's like all this reciting tone stuff. It's all the same notes by everybody. And then here's the mediation. Okay, there's a slight typographical error here. That should actually be a C. Okay, but then here's the second reciting tone. And T, 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 T. This is actually the tone we sang. And this is, you'll see in the tenor, it's this exact melody here. Yeah? Okay? So this is called falso bordone. That was a compositional form where you use, give it an existing melody and put it in the tenor and then build harmonies around it. Okay? So as the centuries progressed in the Renaissance, we come to this now, which is very close to our Anglican tradition. This is from a Psalter by William Boyce, published in 1760. And this is now a free melody. It is no longer based on any existing psalm tone melody. Okay? And this is the Venite, yeah, okay, Psalm 95. And yeah, people, so choirs would sing this, and but you see now that the reciting tone is written in this long note here, okay, and then you have your mediation here, and then you have that second reciting tone, and then your termination cadence, yeah? Okay, so pretty much that intonation, that short little intro thing of a few notes was eliminated, okay? And so this actually looks very similar now to our modern day usage of Anglican chant. Okay? So there's that, it's the two pattern of two reciting tones with two cadences. Okay? Now here's a real Anglican chant. Okay? Again, you will see, here's the reciting tone, here's the mediation, here's the second reciting tone, and then here's the termination. Okay? And but we did something, or at least the Church of England, composers for the Church of England did something. They regulated and standardized the number of notes in the two cadences, the mediation and the termination. Okay? There are always 3 notes in the mediation. 1, 2, 3. Okay? And then there are always 5 notes in the final cadence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? And so this is why we can actually use a little helping device to learn the tone. So we actually can use the words. This is the reciting tone, 1, 2, 3. This is the reciting tone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're, yeah. Chris, do you think you can help point? I'm gonna play it on the piano because my little stupid keyboard there is terrible.
I can calibrate my shit out.
Yeah. I'm gonna demonstrate it. This is the reciting tone, 1, 2, 3. This is the reciting tone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so let's have everyone read the top line. Okay, so this, I know some people may not be able to answer this, but what key is this in? G major. Okay, so what, and that first note in the soprano is what pitch? B. B. Okay, so what solfege would that be? Or number?
3.
3. 3. Because we're in G major, where G is 1 or do. Okay, so what is the solfege of B?
Me.
Mi, or 3. Okay, so let's I'm gonna write it out here. Okay, because we should. It's just to help you remember it. Okay, so the first note is 3. What's the second note? Soprano line. 2. You skip 1. first. Okay? Mi, re, ti, do, la, ti, do, re, do. One more time. Mi, re, ti, do, la, ti, do, re, do. Numbers. 3, 2, 7, 1, 6, 7, 1, 2, 2, 1. Okay. This is a reciting tone, 1, 2, 3. This is a reciting tone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the reciting tone, 1, 2, 3. This is the reciting tone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm gonna play the harmonies now, and you sing this is the reciting tone. There you go. Okay, try. Okay, and so let's talk about how we notate the change to the mediation now, right? How do we know when to get off the reciting tone? Well, it's done with that line there. And you see these lines here? They basically correspond to the bar lines. It's very modern notation now, yeah? So the lines in the music, or in the text, correspond to lines in the music. Okay?
So the pitch is found out on that new notation, like the modern, how do we find out the pitch of the whole thing,
We were just singing it.
I know, but I sing it because I know it, but how do I look at that treble clef and know what pitch the whole thing is sung in?
Because I gave you what
I
G
see.
was.
Yeah. I think she's trying to describe what.
I gave
perfect
you
I
do.
see,
pitch is,
yeah.
Right? I will sing you do.
Yeah, but
So
if I,
the first note is me.
but if
Yeah.
I look at that and just look at it, how would I know?
You can't. I
Oh.
have to give
Oh,
you.
okay,
I have
that's
to
what I was
play
wondering why I
you.
didn't-
But no.
No, you've asked this like 5
Oh, yeah.
times. Yeah. You cannot know. Most 99.5% of people cannot know what that note sounds like.
Aaron knows, but you might not.
I have to.
Oh, boy,
I have to
that's
play it
confusing.
for you.
Yeah,
Yeah. I have to play you.
If you don't have
Do.
absolute pitch, you
Yeah.
gotta hear an example
Yeah.
of instrument or.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most people cannot do that.
Oh,
It's like 1 in 10,000 people can do
I
that.
never took an instrument, so I don't.
It.
Nobody
perfect.
can
No
do
one
that.
can learn
He's
it
saying
either.
nobody can
Yeah.
do that.
And I don't think it's a good thing to have.
Oh,
I don't like it.
You
at
don't
all.
like, you don't like perfect
Yeah, it's
pitch?
super annoying.
Yeah, it's called perfect
Oh.
pitch. And there's
We're
some
talking
things
about
that have it.
absolute pitch, sometimes probably not so well called a perfect pitch. Yeah. But you don't need perfect pitch to be able to sight sing. If you know this note, the relative system of do, re, mi,
Mhm.
or 1, 2, 3, you can sing this as long as I give you what do is.
Yeah.
my thing was, I always had this idea that you look at the music and I should be able to know
Yeah.
exactly how it
Dispel
sounds.
that. Dispel that
So
thought.
that's what I was
Because
worried
it's
about.
not possible.
Yeah.
That's what I was worried about.
The music,
Well, don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I thought I had to be like a hidden piano, you
No,
know, like.
no.
what we're all seeing is the relative intervals between the notes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything is.
And you're
yes.
always gonna give us what
Yeah.
the basic note is to begin
Yes,
with.
I
I
finally-
will always give you the tonic or 1 or do.
I
Yeah.
kinda feel relieved now, cause I thought I
Yeah.
should be able to just.
I mean, I wish I could just have this on a record for you, because you've asked this several times,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I always
Like-
expect more that I should be able to be like a piano.
No, but you
Oh,
should
yeah.
be thinking
Yeah.
of relative pitches.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
the first one I know, yeah.
Yeah. No, not, you don't have to know it, you have to know the spacings of the major scale,
Oh,
basically.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the start of everything, yeah. Okay, okay, so there's one more notation, that dot. There's 3 syllables here, right? Voice of my, but basically between the 2 bar lines, there's only 2 notes. So this basically tells you, this is the first note, of my is sung on the second note. Simple notation, okay? Can we try singing verse 6? Give ear, O Lord. Okay, here we go. So here's.
Should I point the notes or the words?
We're gonna sing the words, yeah. Give ear, Lord, Okay, so in choir, okay, we would learn how to sing all four voices. There's four voices
parts.
needed in order to produce this in a real way, okay? It's not just one soprano line. We need four singers at least to create the harmonies, okay? So, but basically, we use the exact same method we just did to learn the soprano line. We number the alto, which is the lower voice. So 5, 5, 6, 5, 3. We're going on 4, 4, 5, 6, 5, 3. That, yeah, sorry. Sol, la, sol, mi, fa, fa, sol, la, sol, mi. Yeah, and we would learn the tenor and bass parts too. Okay, but that's basically Anglican chant for you in a nutshell. Okay, so I found this cool, silly thing. Okay, comparing Anglican chant and plain song. Okay. Yeah. Anglican chant is very interpretive. It is dramatic, and we're trying to portray the text that we're singing. So if there's stuff about enemies fighting us and like darkness, we will try to sound like that, especially on the organ, when we can have different like orchestral timbres and stuff. Or like we're talking about heaven or light. Okay, we'll try to play up high and stuff like that, okay? So Anglican chant is very much evocative of the text, whereas plain song is much more a meditative kind of singing. It's much more uniform and placid and kind of calm and, yeah, just almost neutral in its emotional delivery, yeah. So there's a very different style to the two, but I think both are kind of, they have their place in worship, so yeah.
That's really funny.
Okay, so let's go back to these neumes. Okay, we were talking about all the funny little symbols in that we found here. Okay, so the two note stack, and which way do you read it? Top bottom or bottom top?
Bottom top.
Bottom top. Okay, and then the dot means you lengthen the note by maybe 2. Okay, and then we have to talk about the quilisma. Okay, so here are the funny names: Hesperatus, Gustos, dot, quilisma. Okay, so this thing is important. It's another way of indicating note lengthening. Okay, but the squiggle note is sung actually normally. It's just like any other note, but what is lengthened is the note before the squiggle. So it's ta ta ta. Yeah, and again, you're reading bottom to top. Ta, 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 okay? There's a couple more notations that you will see. This flat, just like our modern flat, the note is lowered by a half step, okay? And then we have another thing that carried over into modern notation, which is called the epizema, which is this long horizontal line. And that means lengthen the note too, okay? So all these notations, the dot, quilisma, epizema, they all actually mean pretty much the same thing. You have to lengthen some note, okay? But there's just different ways of writing it, okay? The square notation is not the earliest notation of chant. All these funny symbols were notation systems that existed even before the squares. This is just for your, interest, yeah. But look how similar, though. There are many similarities between the squares and the modern notation. Okay, I guess we didn't cover this one too, but the parectus. Yeah, that basically, there's a note before and after the swoosh at the end points of the swoosh. Yeah. But anyway, we use this to sing our entrance sprinkling rites. The Vidi Aquam in Eastertide, and our I Beheld Water, or sorry, Aspergus. What was the English translation? I forget now. Thou shalt cleanse me, or something like that. Yeah. 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 So in your packet, I've basically translated the old notation into modern notation, but in B flat major. I mean, you could sing it in any key you want. But you can compare how all the things translate. The old notations, the old symbols and the new symbols. Okay. This notation was treasured because back in the Middle Ages, before the printing press, every chant book was hand-written, hand-drawn. So this is so this Vidi Aquam, we don't have the Latin, but this is a manuscript from the 13th century of the same
Oh,
music.
that's so cool.
And I'm gonna put it side by side here. Okay, so you can see this.
Oh, yeah, no.
I be head. Just look at that. V D O. Yeah. Okay. So this manuscript has the same music. Okay, and that's what like monks and priests would be reading from, choirs. Yeah, and the books, the chant books, were like bigger than my torso.
Bones.
Yeah, maybe like as big as this.